Welcome to Hort Culture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. Welcome to another episode, and we hope wherever you are warm and it's spring-like, and you're not too
But
hot.
not too
the
warm.
wind isn't
Not
smacking.
too warm.
Yeah, not too warm. I said warm, not hot. Okay.
I was sweating earlier. That was concerning.
Glistening even. Glistening.
Well, we are joined. We have a full room today. We have three wonderful guests today. So we have Hunter Ann and Spencer from KCARD and Dr. Steve Isaacs from the Ag Economics Department. So we're happy to have all of them on there. And if you've been listening for a while, you know that we've had KCARD on a couple times. So we've got some great episodes by then and more to come today. But I do have a question for all of you. Here's our icebreaker. And if you're a listener, I want you to also answer this question. See who you relate to. If you were a berry, what kind of berry would you be? I would be a raspberry.
A raspberry.
I want to be a golden raspberry specifically, in case anybody wondered.
No one was wondering. Everyone already.
I mean,
you don't know that. You don't know what our listeners were wondering. I would be a golden raspberry.
You're more of a bronze raspberry.
Wow, after the Olympics just passed, I feel I'm a little offended by that you don't.
You're
think
on the podium.
Gold,
you're on the podium,
but not the top of the podium, Brett. But it's fine. I mean, whatever.
You placed.
Okay,
so good enough.
I'd be
golden raspberry. Okay,
I'd be Huckleberry Hound.
There you go, Huckleberry. Huckleberry's a good one. Yeah, that's sort of one on the fringe. I like it. I like it. Brett, what do you got?
Well, I'd like to hear from Hunter Ann. Looks like she's ready with a berry.
I know she was like rubbing her hands together. She's like, "Ooh,
yeah, like this is a first. I've never been asked such a question.
Such a weird introduction. You're welcome. Thank you, Alexis.
I guess I'm gonna say a strawberry because that's probably what I'm most excited for when they're finally in season. It's like we gotta go now.
I would nominate strawberry for the biggest gap in amazing flavor between local and non-local berries.
Oh, I agree with that. 100%.
It might be the biggest gap. I don't know.
So bring in that local flavor. Yeah.
Spencer.
So I had to look it up because it's been a while since I've enjoyed one of these berries. But you ever hear of a Marionberry?
No.
Is that a ground berry?
So it's from they only grow. DC. They only grow. What's that?
Marion.
I'm pretty sure that's what they're called. They only grow in the Willamette Valley in Oregon and Washington.
Oh wow!
Huh.
And it's like the best pie I've ever eaten.
A Marionberry. I'll have to look that up.
Marionberry. Yeah.
And it's a very site specific. It sounds like. Yeah.
Very much so.
I
tried to bring plants home with me, and they wouldn't allow it. So.
I just wondered if that was it was a berry that you don't just go on a couple of dates with, but you actually,
Oh, it's Marion material.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
that's a Marionberry right there.
Wow.
It says it is a hybrid blackberry, created in Oregon in the 1940s.
Okay.
Great for pies.
It's a fantastic pie.
Sounds like it's
worth the travel to Oregon.
Yeah. Worth the trip, it sounds like. Awesome.
Yeah.
Ray, you're going to pull out some folksy thing that's going to make me...
There's so many good ones. I forget the ones which I'm not going to pick. Last year, Alexis, we saw fields of them. They were real bitter. What was the berry? It wasn't gooseberries.
Aronia?
Currants? I thought, they were currants.
Currants, yes. They've got that look, but you got to watch them. You got to approach carefully because they're not as good as they seem. So yeah, currants. I think we have black currants and every manner of currant. But yes, looks can be deceiving, I guess is where I'm going with that. Yes.
So Ray's claim to fame is, I'm not as good as I seem.
No. And that's a pretty low bar, and I'm underachieving under that. So perfect. But those berries, I was kind of surprised. Beautiful berries, and they had a whole farm of them. And I kept asking myself, why do they have a whole farm of these? We tried.
They made good ice cream, though.
They did. We tried 30 varieties, and my face was contorted as if, something bad had happened at the end of that trip.
So confirmed, if you put it with a bunch of sugar and fat, It is
It's
delicious.
Kind of like a Marionberry. Kind of like a Marionberry, maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
All
so
right, Brett.
that's it. That's
well,
it.
I like to think of myself as
Brett, that's my thing about rhubarb. There's not enough sugar in the state of Kentucky to make rhubarb edible.
But you mix it with strawberries and enough sugar, and you've got magic, Steve. You've got magic.
That helps. That helps.
I don't know. It's still questionable at best for me.
Okay, thanks. I also am kind of like, is this what y'all are real excited about? Are you sure?
Yeah, I think it's botanic resilience makes people just like, we got to figure out something to do because this thing is doing good.
It grows. It keeps growing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, I think of myself as equal parts Wendellberry and Chuckberry.
Oh my goodness.
I would say that maybe an elderberry.
Okay, that's a good one.
Because everybody says that it's good and beneficial, but it's kind of an acquired taste.
So you're like the wisest of the berries. You're the elderberry.
I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, I'm feeling more and more like an elderberry. Yeah, with it.
I can see that being a nickname for you, elderberry. Just
it likes to spend time in an agroecological context with other trees. I love spending time with trees. So
an ecosystem approach.
You've quit preaching and gone to meddling. I am the elderberry here today.
The elderberry,
the eldest berry. It's going to be like the Marionberry of elderberries in Kentucky.
Yes,
there you go.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground with this berry talk. I mean, I've got 2 or 3 ideas I'm going to have to research after this. So.
Okay, so you're welcome. Please stop judging my question so harshly.
I loved that question.
I think I don't know what I'm doing.
That was a good horticulture question. Well, one of the things about a lot of berries is they're perennialized. So they're going to be there, especially brambles, going to be there for a long time. And the thing about us humans is that we're not always going to be here for a long time. And so if you're putting in some berries, you may be thinking, well, somebody down the road, it's my kids or my grandkids or whatever, are going to be picking these berries and thinking of me. Doesn't always exactly work out that way. So Steve gave a presentation at our fruit and veggie conference, horticulture conference in Kentucky about farm transition. And it's been a topic lots of people have been thinking about and talking about. You've seen statistics about the age of farmers and the shrinking selling off of farmland, all these things happening across time. And so we decided to pull these 3 amazing folks in to talk a little bit about this. Who's going to take care of the brambles when I'm gone and all the other things, including the farm that they're located on. And so I think maybe it would be helpful just to start out. How long have you all been working in this farm transition space? What's your involvement with it? Maybe we'll start with Steve, and then maybe move to Hunter Ann, and then to Spencer.
Probably for the last 10 to 15 years of my extension career, this has been one of the bigger things that I have been working on. And it's kind of like being in the funeral home business. You got it's recession proof. You always got an audience out there. But yeah, it's been something I've done here, out of state, some, but yeah, and it's applicable to everybody. I mean, at a pretty good size venue a couple of years ago, somebody asked, "What's the most unpopular thing about this?" I said, "Well, you're all going to die." So yeah,
that's a strong opener. That's real strong.
It is, isn't it? Though, yeah, that's the stage. Yeah. Now with our cheery thoughts out of the way,
with our botanical names, we like the Latin, the Asclepias tuberosa and things like that. But this is sort of the memento mori version of that. Remember that you too are mortal. So you've been what are the kind of the places and ways that you've engaged with this across time, Steve?
Well, since I'm an state extension specialist, it's been a lot of county meetings, multi-county sessions. Oftentimes they would be sort of sequential or half day or full day, and try to bring some other folks in because I am not the professional in the room. I am not the attorney, the accountant, the tax advisor, the financial planner. So oftentimes we would do this in some sort of a multi-meeting setting and bring in some of those professionals. Also, it has been really, really helpful to work some with our specialists over in family and consumer science, because they look at this more from a family side than necessarily the farm management side, which is my approach.
It involves some relationships. This does too. It's one of those things that I've seen go a lot of different ways, I guess. And Steve, I know that you've done other programs that that some others of you on the podcast today may have been involved with. But like, would you consider like side programs like the Kentucky Ag Leadership Program? I mean, is that really kind of, somebody said that was kind of a part of farm succession planning? I was like, how is that? But they said, well, it's the future management, the management aspect. And I didn't know if you considered stuff like that kind of as a part of that too. And I had never considered it that way, that was kind of addressing kind of the future generation, sort of as far as management on the side.
Oh, absolutely right. I think that's an interesting observation, and certainly we say that the reason for developing leaders, or the job of leaders, is to raise up new leaders. So that's something we're trying to do with our leadership certificate here in the college and Kentucky Ag Leadership Program. The other side of that, and this really relates to the transition side, is that sometimes leaders don't get out of the way when they should. So, so I have this presentation called "When It's a Long Time Too Long," and it deals with fossilization of leadership. And in a lot of ag or rural organizations or institutions, we have people that like being there and they like the perks of the job and they like the status, and they tend to want to brag about the fact that, yeah, I've been in this role for 40 years. Well, if you are, you've kept two other people at least from being in that leadership role. So that is an interesting side twist on the whole notion of transition planning.
Well, when they said that, I was like, wow, this farm succession planning, because my first time realizing that it involves a lot of different things when you're talking about succession, and some of the information I've seen from, some of the other programs that those on the, podcast today kind of will be talking about, I'm sure. But I was like, wow, this is a big topic. It's a big topic. And that was the first time a couple of years ago when someone said that dawned on me that it's more than just asset transfer. You mentioned FCS is involved in that, and all the relationships and this, that, and the other. So very cool.
Steve, I haven't observed that fossilization of leadership, but it sounds interesting. I'll have to look it up and see if I see it anywhere. Hunter Ann, what about you all? So for those who maybe aren't familiar with KCARD, they are truly one of the gems of our Kentucky agricultural world. They do a lot of support for things like business planning and market research and analysis, and all kinds of direct support to producers, and have been doing it for the last 25 years. Congratulations on your upcoming anniversary. But this space of farm transition, in broad sense, you've been engaged with it for a long time through business planning and other things like that. But there's kind of this more recent stuff that you have been up to. What can you tell us about that?
Right. And I came on into KCARD almost 2 years ago, and very shortly after I started, that's when we started really digging into what us being more heavily involved in farm transition would look like. And so that was one of my first big projects, was like, go research and see where this is at in other places, and did it work? I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. So I've been involved with it ever since I started at KCARD in some form or another, but have moved more into looking at it through, like, I went through, and Spencer just finished it up too, a mediation class, and learning how to tackle tough conversations and keep it all civil. And we've sat through and been engaged in farm succession coordinator trainings, and learning more of how to manage, again, emotions and answer family questions and handle. I mean, someone had already said it. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot to tackle within, more than just this transfer of assets, but we're also dealing with people, and people can be great, but they also can be their own bunch of emotions. It's hard to predict how they'll go. And so we looked at it, how we may help manage the conversation in a highly emotional situation. But we're also kind of similar to what we would do in a business plan. We're looking at, what are people's goals? What is the realistic state of the farm, and where do we want to go, and how do we create the plan to help them get there? So it's a similar process, just in a different context. But we were already doing some transition planning when talking about business planning and development, what that looks like, and the continuation of it. So it was a natural fit also with the technical assistance abilities of KCARD for us to move into this space. And so we tackled it head on.
If Alexis Ray and I break out into a fight, we will look to you to mediate
That's
that
right.
live on the podcast for maybe
I'd say
a
get into your
demo.
corners.
We're going to do what
I
we
don't need
can
any
to.
mediation. I'm gonna win.
We
That
always
sounds
have
like
That
someone who needs mediation.
equal
exactly.
versus
It's like,
fairness.
okay.
It's a rumble.
I'm the problem.
Yeah.
Well, see, you
No, I'd
mentioned
say
in
we
the
got to go into different rooms. We'll come back later.
Time out, Alexis. Time out.
breakout rooms.
Brad.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Is
you
it
mentioned
helpful if
when
you had control of the mute key? Would that help with mediation?
If I could have a real life mute key, we would probably be way faster.
Yeah. Good thing about an online meeting is if something gets thrown at you, it doesn't hurt as much if you're online. Maybe that could be incorporated into the meeting notes. Yeah.
I'd like to approach this meeting in lecture format. Please, everyone, mute yourselves, and I will share everything that we're going to do here. You mentioned when we were warming up, you were talking about the complementary but separate nature of estate planning and transition planning. Can you just put a little bit of context around that and what you meant by that? And I think you all are kind of landing in the transition space more, but there's implications for both.
And I had always heard, or wouldn't say always heard, but had heard a lot of succession and estate planning used pretty interchangeably. But the more we were digging into this topic, specifically of transition planning, there was a realization that we're talking about two different things, or they should be, because it boils down to I'm not an attorney. I don't want to be an attorney. And there's other people that do a really good job of being an attorney. And that the estate part, that is where those legal professionals come into play, and they know the ins and outs of the law that surrounds estate planning, and that is very much needed. But what we're looking at with the succession plan is not necessarily like the tax code and all that fun stuff, but looking at the transition of leadership, like we were talking about sometimes when leaders have a hard time of letting go and have been there for 40 years. Like there's a lot of institutional knowledge there that maybe not necessarily has ever been communicated to the younger generation. And I kind of think of in that space of we're talking about where a certain piece of equipment is and how you have to hit it in just the right spot. And then it goes, and then we can carry on with our task. Like that stuff's not written down or in a tax code or necessarily in an estate plan, but we can put it in our succession plan, so to speak, like what makes the farm run and work within a season or for a particular task. But also we've all heard the conversation of like, well, I don't know what's going to happen to the farm once it's done, if it's me, if it's so-and-so down the road, or who gets it. And we can kind of help guide those conversations so the whole family knows the plan. And what I meant by like estate plan, succession plan, they can be complementary, is we can put that succession plan or that transfer of knowledge and of roles and of leadership into an estate plan. And we've hashed all those fun conversations outside of an attorney's office. And again, I love the attorneys because I cannot do, nor do I necessarily want to do what they do, but they are expensive. And if we can hash out the awkward conversations outside of the attorney's office without the meter running, that ends up being a much more favorable bill at the end of all of that. But also sometimes folks get nervous talking to attorneys and hashing out their family, maybe tensions in front of other people. So I mean, I'm not related to them. I'm not their attorney or their tax professional. So it's like, you want to tell me the dirty laundry, I guess you can. And we'll figure out a way to navigate through it.
Hunter Ann's like, I didn't know I was a therapist now, but apparently I am.
There have been times like, well, maybe I should have paid attention a little bit more in certain classes when we were discussing those things. But it is a little bit like a family therapy and vent session. And sometimes people just need to air that out, and then we can get down to the actual planning and focusing on the goal once they've gotten whatever it is off their chest sometimes, and we can move past.
Well, Hunter, you make a really good point. the families need to know what they want before they go for the professional
Right.
help. That's going to obviously cost them some money. So if they've got this worked
Yeah.
out and they have sort of a plan in their mind, then you can pay somebody to help facilitate that, and you need to do that.
Yeah.
So you make a good point.
And they know who's going to come in after them, right? Like they don't just show up to
Right.
the lawyer and they're like, "Oh yeah, my son's taking over," and the son's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, I'm not doing
Yeah.
that."
They get expensive. Yeah, the meter's running at that point. And just the value of knowing, like, for instance, what documents you need to have in place when you go to legal, and, like you said, just your goals. Just knowing that has a lot of value because literally time is money when you get to legal, I'm sure. And that time is
Mhm.
not cheap in that,
Right.
instance. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have multiple friends who are lawyers. So I like them and everything. But how can you tell if somebody's a lawyer?
Oh
Don't worry, they'll tell you.
No,
God.
they'll
That
let
was
you know.
good.
And on that note, Spencer, I'm
It's the landing
this
that's
this
funny. Yeah.
this didn't necessarily come to happen overnight, and I'm curious. So you all have this program, the CASP program, which you can tell us what that stands for. But I think there's also some groundwork that was laid before that that's built out of the reality that every estate and every business transition plan is going to be messy and complicated and unique. But agriculture really poses some specific things that can be challenging, or that can, so who are the actors, funders, people involved in that? How has this come to be that you all have this wonderful program now?
Yeah, Brett, I think that's a fair question to ask. For us, I've been at KCARD now for like 9 years, I think. So you'll be there long enough. Next thing you know, you're one of the senior members of the team, just by default. But
Elderberry.
one of the things that I think I saw a lot that kind of led up to this and really started the conversation with some of those partners you mentioned was some of our own clients at KCARD. I mean, you mentioned it there, Brett. We've been around for 25 years this year, and we've been around long enough to where our clients are starting to look at retirement. Um, and what does that look like for them? Is that the next generation coming on? Is that selling the farm outside the family, but we want to keep it an agricultural business? So that's really what led us, KCARD, to be involved in this from the get go. Was all those relationships that we've established over the years, and then you talk about partners. We've been talking with Kentucky Farm Bureau, and really when they started their Kentucky Farmland Transition Initiative, that's really what gave this thing legs to really take off. Um, you know, Eddie Melton and his team there at the state level at Bunsen Parkway, they had this foresight of, they were seeing their membership change and people coming in, coming out of the business and asking them the questions of, hey, what am I going to do with this property or this operation that I've built over the last, 20, 30, 40 plus years. And so that really got them involved. And once they rolled their program out, and that's about 2 years ago, I'm probably off on the timeline, but we'll say about 2 or 3 years ago, that's really where KCARD started getting involved. Of, KFTI would have these quarterly calls that KCARD would participate in. Of, what does farmland transition look like, and where should we be going? That was the questions Farm Bureau was asking that we were a part of. And then next thing you know, KCARD's like, well, we would like to be involved in this because of the questions we were already getting. And then I guess you fast forward a little bit into the future to catch us up to where we are today. Uh, there was a program. It was a certified mediation program through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Kentucky was liking one of those, and really what that does is it gives uh, FSA, all the USDA programs, really FSA, NRCS, rural development. They all have a seat at the table then of if there's issues that come up through the facilitation of those programs, they can be mediated to try and resolve those issues. KCARD said, well, we feel like this would be a role that we could serve. By providing that service, it also opened us up to receive funding to focus on the transition side. that we're all here talking about today. And then I think another thing that I need to mention too is Kentucky Ag Development Board, Kentucky Office of Ag Policy. Uh, that administration has seen, I think, also the same thing. They've been around long enough now to where they're getting the same questions KCARD was and Farm Bureau was. So it kind of brought us all full circle to say, well, how can we work together to make those things have a solution? And then you tie it in with Dr. Isaacs being here, tie UK into the mix. And that's really the full circle moment for KFTI starting the process, pulling in KCARD, pulling in UK, and then starting the certified mediation program that KCARD's a member of now. That also has, I think, Steve, if it's all right if I mention that, it's given the opportunity for a focused effort on UK's end. Not that there hasn't been, but an actual extension specialist that's going to focus in on that has also resolved from this programming that
And
all
Spencer,
three of these partners have been a part of.
Emails have been flying fast and furious for the last few days, and it looks like we're going to be able to post that position perhaps by the end of this week. So that is going to be a real feather in the cap to be able to bring somebody in who can look at that all the time. That will be their job.
Yeah.
Well, for the next part of this conversation, I thought I would throw some ideas out and just hear your all's reaction to this or things that you've come across with this. One of these is just me straight up stealing from Steve's presentations, and talking about the idea in a navigating a transition plan. People are thinking about this. Who starts the conversation? Who's the one that in the family that I hesitate to say should, but I'll just go for it. Should start the conversation. And have you all seen that play out in different ways? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I love having audiences where there's a lot of gray heads in there because I put the burden on them. It's a very difficult conversation for younger generation to start. Because as soon as you start the conversation, it's almost imbued with the notion of, well, what am I going to get out of this? And so I would much prefer the senior generation start this. And one of the ways I've used this as a way of killing the conversation is when the senior generation says, don't worry, I'll take care of you. That means I don't want to talk about this. So I'd say rather than say, don't worry, I'll take care of you, that generation needs to be saying, here's what we're going to do. This is what we would like to do in the future. So, Brett, I'd put the burden on the older generation because it is so difficult for the younger generation to start. However, as an example, a younger generation that was having difficulty getting that started finally just said, okay, Mom, let's start at the end. What songs do you want at your funeral? and then they work backwards from there. So, so younger generation can start it, but it's much harder for them to.
It's interesting that's the case.
Has that played out in your all's experiences? What's the? Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, so I think from my side of things, and maybe it's just the stage of life that I'm in, I'm getting the questions from the people who have been in the family operation for 10, 15 years out of school now. That's where I'm getting the questions from. I think they're not looking at it from the greed standpoint that's been alluded to. They're looking at it from, I've been a part of this operation. I've helped build this operation. No disrespect to the generations before me. I mean, I'm standing on their shoulders to get here. But we've all found our lanes and stuck to them to grow what we've got now today. But they're looking at it from the standpoint of, if something happens, do I still have employment? Am I still a part of the operation? Do I need to find another job before all this hits the fan? So that's where I'm getting the questions from. I like Steve's comment about, my age and younger approaching it that way to start the conversation. But I do feel like that it takes some of the onus off of those 20 to 40-year-old folks if the older generation starts it, because then it's kind of been blessed of, hey, I see this as an issue and then I'm ready to talk about it. So let's have the conversation.
That seems to make sense. What I heard, from your comments was, and I know it's not uncommon for farm families, some to be on the farm, some to be off the farm. But let's say a certain segment of the farm family, the ones that are on the farm, yeah, they've kind of got a big dog in that fight. If it's their goal to stay on the farm, I mean, and I'm sure that's one of those mediation things to square that once you get everybody to the table, those that are off and those that are on the farm, and that gets to that whole equal versus fair, conundrum, and working out issues like that. In addition to everything else, I'm sure that gets in, you know, uh, to some touchy areas and takes some discussion. So it's probably just not a 30-minute session with you all that are involved with this. It takes what, a little bit of time, I imagine this process does.
For sure.
Yeah, it does, and I think the key for listeners to think about is it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all in one. I mean, it's not a one. We don't have one conversation and it's done. It's not like you set aside your whole day. Let's bite this thing off in chunks because everybody's attention span is different, right? How long they want to dial into something, especially when it's heavy like this one can be at the start. So let's break it up in pieces.
Yeah.
Do you have a typical first bite that people tend to take, or that if you have somebody who comes and they're like, we know we need help, but we don't know what help we need. What's your some kind of like a first step that might not feel so overwhelming or so daunting?
I tell folks just start writing down your assets and how they're titled. If you don't know where to start, just start. We got to know what you have first to talk about it in the sense of what do you hope to pass on and what's the plan. But we have to have a pretty up to date look at what are we talking about, what all is in the pile, so to speak, and even looking at and something. And Dr. Isaacs, you mentioned this. I was like, I'm going to add that to every PowerPoint, is like looking at your digital estate and the passwords and where's everything at, and also your bank accounts and where are they at, what do you have loans out there at what bank, and do you have someone else on your bank account that if something tragic were to happen that they could access those accounts, are kind of the first things. Like, let's just start getting a lay of land of what even we're talking about within this conversation and start writing it down so we can have a pretty good view of what we're looking at.
So
I
can you
call that my if I go missing folder, but I feel like I need a better, like, non-scary way.
Where's your passwords at, Alexis? Yeah. Where's all the account passwords?
If I go missing, here's how to access everything. But I feel like it could be more positive.
Well, I mean, it's a hard topic to talk about to begin with, Alexis. Yeah.
so
If you go
so
missing.
the digital estate thing, I'm assuming you're not exclusively referring to those NFTs of ape pictures that I bought back in 2021 that don't have any value anymore. I assume you're talking about something else. Can you expand a little bit on what you all mean by that digital estate thing?
I'll tell you the first part of your question. Like that's up to you. Like, I'm gonna let you decide how you
I kind of want
take
to be
care of
buried with them, but I can't figure out a way to turn a
A
digital
yeah,
NFT
digital
into,
asset.
yeah.
Flash drive. Just stick the flash card in there, or flash drive in there with you.
Yeah, just your
Perfect.
digital token, Brett, you're going to be put in with that. I was just kind of curious if you guys have like big categories of things when you're working with people. I know you guys have talked about assets and touched on management a little bit, but is there like big categories that you guys think about behind the scenes? Let's say Joe calls you up, Joe and Emily, the family, and they want to have this conversation. I mean, is there kind of categorizations you walk people through, or how do you guys break it down behind the scenes for people? I mean, what's your game plan? Is there a kind of a game plan, a structure that you guys think your way through with people?
So I think it depends how the inquiry comes in. If I agree 100% with what Hunter Ann said, especially if it's an email inquiry, we've got and Hunter Ann did a phenomenal job putting this together, and I haven't committed to memory what it's called, but we've got kind of like here's the how-to steps of starting the plan. And it's a worksheet that lists out questions. You fill in the blanks that fits you, and then we can start the conversation. Like if it's a digital request, that's where I like to start. If it's a phone call, or if it's you see somebody out and about at a meeting and they pull you aside, then it kind of depends what the questions are. If it's something where, how do we start the conversation? A lot of times I defer back to, well, just tell me how you got here. Especially if it's trying to get that older generation to open up and start the conversation, start the dialogue. Because I'm a history guy anyway. I love learning the backstory to things. So give me a little bit of that. That way, it's something that we've all lived. At least when I say we all, everybody within that operation has lived at some form or time frame together. So that gets everybody comfortable, maybe, and then we can start diving into the harder stuff of what's your goals, what's next, what's the future look like in 5-10 years.
So, Hunter Ann, tell us a little bit about what you've got in that structured worksheet. What are they asking
So
for?
I could call it though, like it's always the question of like, well, what can I start doing today? So like that's what we call it, is like what you can do today. And it does tell you to like go start writing down, listing out those assets, but it follows our similar structure of, I think of it in terms of buckets. And our first set of questions, our first bucket we're going to tackle is like, where are you at right now? So figuring out like who all is involved in the operation, what does it look like structure wise, just kind of gathering the intel, learning the story and the history of the farm or the operation. So we have a few questions on mainly of where you're at, of like looking at what you have, like as in a physical sense, on the farm. Then our second kind of bucket or pot of questions is, where do you want to be? And that one will start asking like, what do you see as like the top priority of your farm transition? And that can vary. Some it's keep it a farm at all costs. Some it's I just want my kids to get along no matter what that looks like. Or it could be I wanted to stay a farm, but it doesn't have to be my kids. Like someone else can take it over. But it can be a variety of answers. But for them to start thinking about what their top priority in a transition looks like, because that'll dictate what the conversation moving forward looks like. If it's family harmony above all else, then we're going to have to keep that in mind and keep redirecting the conversation towards that goal overall. And then the last section of that document is, how are we going to get there? So we have where are we at right now? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? That one, it's when we very gently will pass you along to the legal professionals that can make it legal and binding, but we'll discuss how to get documents ready for that process and how to find those legal professionals and kind of build that team. But that what you can do today document kind of walks you through the listing of assets, how they're titled, things to think about as far as where pieces of property might be located or what banks have you used in the past. Then our second section of looking at those goals, long-term goals questions to help kind of frame our conversation. And then we talk about in the third and final part that's more of an individualized, depending on what we've developed the prior two sections and getting them ready to go on to the legal section.
Yeah. I have a question. When is there such thing as it being too early to start this planning, like the succession process?
I used to say no, but I had someone want to have that conversation and their children were like in elementary school. It's like that's kind of hard to
hard to do goal setting, smart goals with kindergartners. Yeah.
So not that. So now I change it to possibly, depending on who we're talking about in the conversation.
Because it really is a family kind of discussion, isn't it? I guess that's what you're getting at, is you want everybody to be able to be at the table and take part in that. Is that the case? I mean, everybody that it impacts, it sounds like, yeah.
Well, yes, but then Hunter Ann makes a good point. There's a time when you're too young to have a substantial in that conversation. But part of that conversation that does need to be had, maybe in when the 8-year-old is not around, is okay. If something happens to us, what's going to happen with the kids? I mean, that's part of the plan. Just or do you have a plan in the event of bad things to be able to get them to 21 or 25? So I think it's if you've got kids, it's not too young or not too early to start thinking about it, even just from the standpoint of their welfare and their future.
So certain aspects, I mean, think about it from like day one if you want to. Certain aspects, it sounds like, because that's just good planning overall. It sounds like.
Right.
Yeah, it opens up another thing that I'm going to rip directly from the Steve Isaacs playbook here of this discussion that you frame, Steve, as asking whether or not, from the vantage point of the parent or the older generation, asking whether or not this farming life is an opportunity or an obligation, and having some real hard conversations about that. And Hunter Ann touched on that with what's your goal? How are you going to get there? Is it family harmony? Is it keep it in farmland, but something else? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, it's gotten to the point here in the past few years, about every third slide in my slide deck says opportunity or obligation. And I mean, families really need to have that conversation because we are, it's one of the most wonderful things, and maybe sometimes the most notorious things about farm life is that we raise our kids to be farmers. We start out giving them little toy tractors, and all of us who grew up on a farm, that's just part of it. I didn't even know there was a term for that till I got prowling around looking at some other stuff, and psychologists have a term for that. It's called identity foreclosure. When you decide what somebody's going to do, even without their knowledge or consent or acceptance, and it's not just farming. I mean, you could be. Let's face it, you're probably root for a sports team because you were raised that way, and you never give it a thought to do anything else. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh man.
So yeah, having that discussion early on and not feeling like the kids are being forced to do that. If it is an opportunity and it's perceived as such, it is wonderful opportunity. But if it's an obligation, then it's not. Deb Reed, the ag nurse that worked with many of us for years, said that sometimes in ag, one of our problems is we don't give people permission to do anything else. And we should be able to consider that it's okay. If you want to have this farm, great. If you don't, I'll encourage you in some other area. So yeah, it's identity foreclosure. It actually has a term for it now.
Yeah, I think the important part about that is if we're all operating under the assumption that this is an opportunity and I'm excited about it, and then mom and dad die, and that's when I tell everybody, actually, I don't want to do this. The whole transition plan, everything has been set up under a false assumption that because we couldn't have an honest conversation before that happened. Well, I wanted to maybe wind us up here, end up here with just an explicit. Hunter Ann and Spencer, if somebody wants to get started working with you all in the CASP program, and can you remind us what CASP stands for? But if they want to get started, what does that look like? How do they kind of get the ball rolling?
Yeah, so I think I neglected to answer that whenever I started my talk there, but Kentucky Agri-Legacy Solutions Program is CASP. We love acronyms, so we had to make this one an acronym as well.
Another one in the stew. I like that.
yeah, that's right. That's right. But really, a couple different ways. Actually, three. I guess I'd point you 3 different ways, depending on what your poison was. You could start off with our website. We've got, if you go to kcard.info, info, and then go to hold on, I'm going to have to look it up myself to make sure I tell everybody the right way. At the top right corner, whenever you open up our website, there's going to be a toolbar, and it's going to say services and tools. It's the third one over from the left. And if you go all the way to the bottom, it says transition your farm business. That's going to give you the quick rundown of what CASP is and how KCARD is here to help. It walks through a lot of those things that Hunter Ann mentioned as far as where are you now, where you want to be, and how do you get there. The second thing, if you just want to reach out with an email, CASP, KASP, at kcard.info. So CASP, KASP, at KCARD.info. and that's going to go to Hunter Ann. So Hunter Ann watches the email contacts that we get. The third thing that I have in my possession at the moment is the phone number. So we have a dedicated phone number for CASP, and I'll throw that out here at 859-417-2592. That's the three ways of getting a hold of one of us within the program. And then the other thing too, you can download the where are you at worksheet that Hunter Ann has put together. You can download that and even get started on your own before you do any of those things. If you want something to do before you engage with us.
And Hunter Ann, what does that process look like once the ding goes off, it's in your email inbox? How do you kind of reply? What's the first steps? What's the process? I assume you just call all the family members immediately and get on a Zoom call at that moment. But
Yes.
no,
It's
but
instant. It's
there's
amazing.
an opportunity to get slowly on ramp to this process, right?
Right, right. So generally, if I had to, we had to categorize my emails. Usually, it's people that are actually wanting the main KCAR line at this moment. So I will very nicely say this, thank you so much, and pass them on to the correct avenue. But a lot of times, what if someone's just wanting more information about the program? I'll send them. I'll send them that what you can do today and our general like process document that breaks down what working with us would look like. Of some of the questions we'll go through, how we can help you prep for those legal meetings down the line. Just kind of give the rundown of what we can offer if they're wanting more information. But some people very much are like, no, like I know I need to do this. And so that'll definitely send them what you can do today to get started document. I'll take their contact information and set the reminder to in about 3 or 4 weeks, give them some time to really think over their answer and reach back out and see how we can help further if they're ready to move forward, need some more time, just kind of what their general need is at that moment after they have received that kind of starting info.
Mm-hmm.
We
Awesome.
didn't
Well,
ask, is there a fee to this service?
No, that's the best part. I don't know how we forgot that. It's
I knew
free.
the answer, but I wanted you to like shout it about how awesome
I need to
this
keep a
resource is.
sign on my desk and just hold up. No, it's free.
And it sounds like
Free
you guys work
hugs,
with a
but
lot
it's
of
free succession planning.
free succession planning. Sounds like you guys work with some awesome groups too. I guess I didn't realize until I started looking over some information for today that there are so many groups and kind of umbrellas that kind of fit under that's working in this area. And sounds like it's going to get expanded, Dr. Isaacs, maybe here in the future.
Yes, I hope we're going to have a better extension presence in this. Some of us been working in this area, but it is such a big area. It's difficult to go out there, and we simply haven't had the resources to do what Hunter Ann and Spencer and KCARD are doing, and that is sit down with people and do this.
mm-hmm.
I also think we'd be remiss, and I think it's been evident in our discussion today that this is not just one person who's going to get you through this. You need those legal, tax, accounting, financial planning resources. And it's great that KCARD has this that can start it out without charging anybody anything and letting them know where they need to go and maybe building that transition team that can help. And that's going to vary depending on the business, the complexity of the business.
Mm-hmm.
I heard somebody say the other day that the solution to all this is that when you have one kid, stop. So it makes
What if
things
you
a lot
farm and don't
easier.
have any kids? I feel like that's good too.
One and done is the UK way, Steve. One and done. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well,
Ray's going to be getting a phone
Steve,
call.
this topic is inherently deals with death, and I think in a lot of cultural frames in the U.S. and in the West and other places too, we think of death as a morbid thing, but it turns out it's a part of life, and it's literally a part of everyone's life. I grew up. My dad was a cop, police officer, and was very blunt about that reality. And he really, our estate plan was crystal clear. And so when he died, it was a major burden off of our shoulders. And there's a lot of positivity that came out of those seemingly morbid discussions. And so I'm wondering if you have any, as the eldest Barry, I'm wondering if you have any concluding words of kind of wisdom or the value from your experience working with people that you want to leave us with about this.
Well, it is incredibly ironic that the one thing that is an absolute certainty is the one thing that many people don't want to talk about. I mean, just outside the ag world, there's estimates that maybe 2/3 of Americans don't even have a will. So, but 4/3 of Americans are going to die. So yeah, no, I don't want 1/3 are prepared. So not trying to be flippant, but it is an inevitable fact of life. It is part of life. And to be able to think and prepare that, not thinking about it, not having those discussions does not either delay it or prevent it from happening. It is going to happen. So I think the earlier you can start planning or thinking about this, the better. Involve everybody. So have these conversations and use the resources like KCARD has and some extension resources and other to just go ahead and get that discussion started.
Awesome.
That's great.
Well, we really appreciate you guys being here with us today and telling us all the things that we should be doing if we go missing, or just want the next generation to have some a good experience, right? Whether they're family or just someone purchasing and wanting to farm. Sometimes we forget that there's lots of people out there who there's a whole host of students right now at the University of Kentucky who want to go farm. So those of you who are in leadership positions, trust me, there's someone who wants to come after you. But anyways, we appreciate this. We're going to post all of those links in our show notes so that people can find you easily, as well as they can follow us on Instagram at Hort Culture Podcast, and we'll post some of those. We'll tag KCARD as well on there so that people can. We like easy clicks, right? We like to be able to get around. If this was helpful for you all as listeners, please leave us a comment in there and let us know if you want to hear more about this type of thing or something along these lines. We'd love to be able to do that. We always love having our KCARD pals on here, and I mean Steve's pretty cool, I guess, in some situations. So, anyways, we appreciate you guys. Thanks for being here, and we hope you join us next time. Have a great one.